Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and keep watching more details. Did Savannah Chrisley give up on prison reform when parents were released? Fans of Chrisley Knows Best saw Todd and Julie Chrisley get an early release from prison thanks to a presidential pardon back in May. During their time behind bars, the Chrisley family, particularly Todd and Julie's daughter Savannah, famously discussed prison reform. However, since then, fans are wondering if this will still be the case for the star now that Todd and Julie have been released. The Chrisley family became famous through the USA Network series, Chrisley Knows Best. Back in 2022, Todd and Julie were found guilty on a variety of charges, including bank fraud and tax evasion. Originally, the two were expected to spend a combined sentence of 19 years behind bars. However, they received an early release after being granted a presidential pardon by President Donald Trump. During their time in prison, members of the family, including Todd and his daughter Savannah, have discussed prison reform. As previously reported, even back in 2023, Savannah had been dubbed a poster child for prison reform. At one point, early on, there was even concern that her attempts to raise awareness could end up causing more harm than good for her parents. Since their own release, Todd and Julie have often discussed prison reform. As previously reported, during a recent episode of their podcast series, Todd recounted an emotional moment when he left prison, with other inmates asking him not to forget them. However, with their release, some fans have felt that Savannah has calmed down her efforts to fight for prison release. Taking to social media, one fan asked, "No more prison reform talk or efforts from Savannah?" As the fan continued, "Haven't really heard her speak about it ever since her parents got released." However, the fan acknowledged that just because they didn't hear anything as of late doesn't mean it hasn't been happening. As the fan noted, maybe she is doing things behind the scenes. But knowing how vocal she is like Todd, I don't think that's the case. Taking to the comments, many fans shared their own reactions to the idea. Some noted there was some dissonance between Todd's comments while behind bars and since his release. In recent conversations, Todd seemed to emphasize receiving special treatment while in prison, usually emphasizing that he had to make his demands clear with staff. As another fan wrote, "That's so confusing too, because when he was imprisoned, she was talking about how bad it was and the conditions. But once he got out, he had been talking on the podcast about how his stay wasn't bad and how he would get food from restaurants brought to him and stuff like that." A few fans also felt that her main focus was seeing her parents pardoned. Others felt that these things take time, pointing out that there were times Savannah felt that wouldn't happen either. However, others felt she is busy dealing with her parents returning to her life, as well as the family's new Lifetime docuseries. Some comments included, "She wasn't doing anything except trying to get her parents out. Mission accomplished. From what I heard, she wishes her dad was back in jail, or the way he described it, summer camp." For her part, Savannah also talked about what she has planned since her parents' return on her Unlocked podcast. In a solo episode, she touched on her journey since her parents' pardons and shares the emotional roller coaster she experienced during that time. Have you been following this story? Make sure you come back to for all the latest reality TV and celebrity news. For months, Savannah Chrisley's voice had echoed through podcasts, Instagram lives, and courthouse steps like a rallying cry for justice. The reality star turned advocate had thrown herself into the fight for prison reform after her parents, Todd and Julie Chrisley, were sentenced to lengthy prison terms in a high-profile fraud case. It wasn't just about her family, she said back then. It was about everyone who had been wronged by a system she described as cold, outdated, and unforgiving. She spoke with journalists, sat down with lawmakers, and even visited other inmates' families to hear their stories. "This isn't just my battle," Savannah declared in early interviews. "This is a human rights issue." But when news broke that her parents' sentences were being shortened and they'd be coming home much sooner than expected, fans started asking a harder question. Would Savannah still be as loud now that her own fight had a happy ending? The early fire. Before her parents' release, Savannah had a single-minded focus. She posted legal documents, shared harrowing stories of prison conditions, and painted vivid pictures of the struggles inmates faced: overcrowded cells, limited health care, and long waits for appeals. She even became emotional when discussing the impact on children separated from incarcerated parents, drawing on her own experience of raising her younger brother and niece during Todd and Julie's imprisonment. Her advocacy attracted both praise and skepticism. Some lauded her courage, others accused her of being driven by personal stakes. But even critics admitted Savannah was relentless. She was showing up at meetings most reality stars wouldn't dream of attending, speaking to congressional aides, and writing op-eds on criminal justice reform. The shift, the turning point, came quietly. After months of emotional updates and late-night rants about the justice system, Savannah's tone on social media began to change. Instead of prison reform statistics, she was posting brunch photos, skincare routines, and behind-the-scenes clips of her podcast studio. The hashtags once dedicated to justice causes were swapped for lifestyle and beauty tags. Then came the day her parents walked out of prison early, smiling and holding hands, with Savannah waiting nearby. It was a moment she had prayed for, and one that instantly reignited rumors. Now that her mission was accomplished, would she walk away from the fight? The public's suspicion. Social media was quick to notice. One fan wrote on Twitter, "Funny how Savannah went radio silent on prison reform the second her parents were free." Another posted, "If it was really about the cause, she'd still be doing it. Feels like it was just about the Chrisleys." The comments stung. Savannah, always combative with critics, fired back in one Instagram story. "Don't you dare say I don't care anymore. You don't know the work I'm still doing behind the scenes." Yet, without the constant public push, her advocacy felt to many like it had faded. Behind closed doors, sources close to Savannah claim she was still connected to several advocacy groups, but had pulled back from public activism to focus on her family's healing. "She's exhausted," one friend said. "She went through a war, and now she wants a moment to breathe." That sentiment made sense. After all, Savannah had been the de facto head of the Chrisley household for over a year. Balancing the emotional toll with national attention had left her drained. Still, for those who had begun to see her as a genuine reform champion, her quiet withdrawal was disappointing. The reality TV lens. It's worth remembering. Savannah is not a lifelong activist. She's a reality television personality who stepped into advocacy because life forced her to. That fact both fueled her relatability and limited her long-term role. Some prison reform leaders welcomed her spotlight during the Chrisleys' legal ordeal, but admitted they were unsure whether she'd remain in the trenches without her parents' fate hanging in the balance. "We see this a lot," one advocate explained. "A celebrity gets involved because it touches their family. The question is whether they can turn that personal passion into sustained commitment for strangers." Her own words. In her first long-form interview after her parents' release, Savannah addressed the shift head-on. "I haven't given up on prison reform, but I have to admit, it feels different now. When your own mom and dad are behind bars, it's this constant ache. It keeps you up at night. Now that urgency is different. It's not gone, but it's less raw." Her honesty was refreshing, even if it confirmed what some suspected. The fire that had fueled her wasn't just about the system, it was about saving her parents.